Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman, is she on deck here for, this is just information and just a short update on the SHARP survey. Maybe very short. Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman. We can certainly.
You can hear me?
Oh, yes.
Let me know when to begin.
Okay, why don't you begin?
Okay, we have Brian Olmsted.
Go ahead, Patty.
Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman. We have Brian Olmsted, who's going to be presenting this today, and he's going to then be asking for any questions that we might have. Brian, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Brian Olmsted, Coordinator, Student Support with Prevention Assignment, Adult Ed at-risk programs. So as a collaboration of 3 state-level agencies, the SHARP survey provides local education agencies a method to survey student populations and obtain data related to local needs, develop community outreach, evaluate program effectiveness, help with legislative efforts, and inform funding decisions. The data is not used as a student record. It's not sold to external third parties and is not identifiable to any single student. USBE staff, we work as part of a committee to help guide the survey through its biennial process. I hope you've had a chance to review the documents and civic clerk related to this information item, and I'm happy now to answer any questions you might have.
Board Member Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about the removal of Mrs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th bullet down. We removed the question about the perceived reasons for being bullied. It looks like because of space. Given the discussions and cases that we've had with the bullying rule, trying to get all that resolved, I hate to happen to that coming out. I think that's valuable information. If we weren't using it adequately in the past, we should be using it in the future. I'm wondering if there's any way to get that back in the SHARP survey, or what the real pulling that out.
You've been kind of breaking up, Board Member Hanson. And I don't know why, but did you get that question? I mean,
Yes, I got the question that's referring to bullying, why it was pulled off, and how we're using the information in the future going forward. Brian, can you answer that question?
Yeah, so our thought was we received a good amount of information from previous administrations to use for study and application. And so it's often with questions, it's a space issue. So it was felt like information had been received, we could put it back in 2023. There's proposal of perhaps it could be on every other administration. But once you have enough, once you have a volume of information, sometimes there are other questions that need to come, to the forefront. And so the thought was that we have enough information, but I understand your point of continued interest in looking at the bullying issue, of course.
Did you have a follow-up at all, Board Member Hanson?
If I may, I just see this as a rapidly evolving area where we have especially some of the issues with orientation, sexual orientation that have come up, and really would have looked forward to seeing more current data on that information and data going forward as that evolves. If there's nothing we can do this year, then I'd certainly appreciate that consideration for the next administration of this test.
Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely take that back to the committee.
Before I go to the next, so Board Member Earl, just hang with me. I just want to make sure for the public that is listening on here, there's been some requests of how do I make public comment, et cetera, et cetera. We have always been able to receive, I think we still can receive public comment via email to the State Board of Education. There's a way to communicate through our website. And then a lot of people have our board members' email addresses also. So that electronic means it's always been there and it's still there now. But we do not have the public comment period on our agenda where we take a brief person to person or person to the board comment session on our agenda. That's where public could speak if they sign up for a couple minutes. That part isn't on here, so I'd still invite. There's still some questions coming up to our office here. How do I participate, or how do I get my comments to the board in that? And that is it still can be done electronically. So sorry about that deflection and delay, but there's been quite a few communications of like how can I get messages to the State Board of Education, or how can I publicly comment on things. So hopefully that takes care of that. Board Member Earl, thank you for being patient. You're up.
Thank you. Actually, I agree with Scott with the question he just asked. I believe that item was only on there one time. That wasn't something I would say that we have extensive knowledge on. I believe it was just on the last one, new to it, the last SHARP survey. If we have wording, not necessarily questions, but recommendations, who do we talk to about that? Because this is more informational today. Is that accurate?
Right. This is an information item today, but definitely I could take that as staff. I could take that information. We have actually 3 members of staff that are part of the committee. And just speaking back to the bullying, there are other questions that do reference the bullying issue. And so a lot of that information comes from the multiple questions, but definitely back to the idea of feedback for questions, we would take that as staff to the SHARP committee. And so I'd be happy to just take those directly.
I would actually disagree well, that's okay. I'll bring that up to you in private. I just think that those questions are very relevant. And I'm not seeing the duplication as we are on other items on here. I do have a concern with how much we're focusing on. I know we have a number of questions on suicide, depression, that kind of a thing. Almost what I would, where we've duplicated it almost 3 or 4 times. I wonder if there's too much of a saturation on that item where we could add others in.
So this will be suggestions from board members. So as we're moving this forward, so we, of course, staff and other people, but it isn't direction from the board. So it can be weighted that way for right now. So this is an FYI as staff and that are receiving these. And so I think inputs are always important. So Board Member Davis.
Thank you.
Board Member Davis.
Thank you.
Okay.
Brian, thanks for the information. This may not be something you could answer today. Maybe you could talk to I don't know. But could you help us to know with the 3 state agencies that operate on this, or the committee that's working on the SHARP task force, to what extent 6th grade or elementary teachers or parents or anyone really familiar with 11 and 12 is the length of the SHARP survey appropriate for that elementary age? I'm wondering what the conversations were on that, and maybe it has to be that length because of data integrity purposes. But if not, I'm wondering if it was any type of streamlining reduction. It's huge survey, I think, for 11-year-olds.
Yeah, that's a great question because concern with adding questions, deleting questions, it's often referenced in the length of time that the survey takes. I think we would point best to this past experience that the sixth graders have been able to manage the length of the survey, but we are very sensitive as a committee to the time that it takes.
This is Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent. One of the things that we can also keep in mind is that questions that are not on the SHARP survey this year can be asked on the climate survey that is going to be asked at the Utah State Board of Education together. So there's another avenue that it doesn't all have to be on the SHARP survey, but we have other collecting this information and take board feedback.
Thank you.
Board members, I'm really sensitive to the time and then also what's on our agenda. As we have more questions on this, we can certainly follow the one procedure that we have, like I have a question or a comment, and then that could be shared back to us. I'm sure this is a hot topic, and moving forward, and if needed, we can give this more attention in a future board member or board meeting. So if there's something really, really important that you need to ask or get clarity on, I'll just take those questions, but we need to move on to our next agenda item. So do
Chair
we have any-
Hudson,
Yes.
it's Board Member Lear. I think it's a pretty important question because it leaves an uncertainty in my mind, and that is when Todd said that he welcomed questions from board members and others about SHARP survey questions. That's not to say that there would be changes to the language just based on one board member's opinion. Is it a much more complicated, sophisticated process?
Yeah, that's correct. We, as a state board, as your staff, I can take questions and concerns back to the committee, but definitely it is a committee process.
Thank you.
We work
that's good, Todd.
together.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's good. Thank you.
Board Member Cannon.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I agree with Jenny Earl. I found a lot of these questions very redundant and repetitive. And I think it could be slimmed down and save kids time and anxiety when taking this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that feedback back because we are looking at that always. I'll specifically speak to the redundancy with the committee.
Okay. Well, thank you, board members and staff, for the information and also the discussion on this topic. I'm sure we'll have more moving forward. So thank you.